Welcome, everyone, to Seeking Insights for Solutions, SIS Table Talk. I'm Ronnie Mathis, and our participants today are...
I'm Susan Moya.
I'm Pearl Jones.
And Cynthia Dodzik.
So, as you know, with Table Talk, we might talk about historical events, or we might talk about things that are going on now. Today, one of the things that we bring to the table is something that's very personal to me, and that's very, very current. I'm a person who lives alone. I'm a very involved aunt, and recently my 23-year-old nephew has moved back in with me here in beautiful sunny Florida.
Congratulations.
Yes, he comes down with a job, and thankfully he's very aware of the fact that he has to pay bills, because it was the first question he asked. So I was so happy to have him back. He and I are very bonded spiritually as well. He's a very quiet, gentle soul. Really wants a very simple life. Wants a job that lets him pay his bills so he can go fishing as often as he can.
Did you say where he came from? He's
From New York.
Oh, from New York. Okay.
Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York. Okay.
So this morning he gets up to go fishing for the first time since he's been back. He's only been back for 2 days. And as he leaves, first of all, I remind myself that he's a grown man and I don't have to tell him everything to do. But once he pulled out, I was struck by terror. When he left, the situation wasn't the way it is here in Florida now. And I realized that the people that are out there in the world that may see him as different won't recognize him as the gentle soul that he is. And I was literally scared to death about whether or not he'd come home safe or come home at all. And I started to call his sister, who's a New York City police officer, and say, turn your location on so you can see where your brother is. But I had to have faith that if he was out there, he'd be okay.
Lonnie, as part of SIS early on, there were a number of us that wrote stories that are included in Where Colors Meet, a tapestry of black and white anthology. And one of the things that came up that was new to me as a white woman is the fact that one of the women said that she cried when she had a son because that was going to be the worst opportunity for that child to grow up black in what is presumably a white world where the white has the advantage. And so that's still to you and to others around this table. Is that something that you still feel as opposed to just having a small baby and growing through? Your friend is 23. Tell me about why you think that's still applicable for somebody at his age, maybe more.
He was not my birth son, but I've had him since birth. And I never worried about him before. I knew that, well, on Long Island, I didn't have to worry about him in that same way. It was a different mindset. He has no understanding of racism. We have this topic all the time. He cannot understand why anyone would be judged by the color of their skin. And it makes no sense to him.
Why?
So it's at the age that he's at now that I worry, because people may look at him and see his silence and his stoicism as a threat. Because as we see in so many videos, anybody can make anything a threat.
As a Black person, it's easy to relate to what she's talking about, but I'd be really interested in your perception of what that might mean. Do you understand when she says that when her nephew went away, she was really fearful about him coming back?
I don't know what to do with that kind of terror. I just don't. You know, how do you get through it? How do you manage on a day-to-day basis?
Do you understand it?
To understand
Do
it?
you
No, do you
understand it
understand
when she's talking about it? Do you understand what
If I understand it cognitively,
Mhm.
I'll never understand it down here because I've never had those experiences. But you know, cognitively, I know Emmett Till coming down from up north just for a nice vacation, and I know Trayvon, just an innocent kid. And when talk about your nephew, an innocent human being. How do you not see those pictures?
I really make a point of not walking in fear most of my life, and I know that that's how he walks too. My fear is not, and it's interesting because I know it's not from anything that he would do. I know strictly, and this is the part that's so hard, it'll be from something that he doesn't do.
Mhm.
And I know that all parents kind of may have that little bit of a fear about their kids coming home, but I think it's different. I mean, for sure.
Well, let me just say that I joined SIS as a person who had very little interaction with Black people. And the reason that it was important to me was because we were storytelling. We opened ourselves up to one another, and I learned a lot. And I didn't know exactly what white privilege was or exactly what some of the terms are. And I've grown to appreciate more than I could ever have thought 4 years ago. I'm wondering if a sit down situation where your nephew sits down with us and others and share stories and can understand that not everybody is looking at him in that way or how to approach subjects or whatever. I'm sure he's considered it himself, but I found just sitting and talking to people being so therapeutic.
He walks with no expectation of being discriminated against. I'm the one with the fear.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
He has a severe anxiety, social anxiety. But again, there are those who see a Black man with facial hair, tall, silent, looking like he's brooding, who may be going through having a severe anxiety attack and perceive that as something other than what it is. And instead of helping him, would step in and perhaps try to control something that doesn't need to be controlled and end up hurting him. You know, and I don't like to tell stories about what doesn't happen or hasn't happened. It hasn't happened to him. But can it? Yeah. In Florida, in the South. Yeah. I found myself as he was leaving reminding him, make sure you obey the traffic laws. Use your turn signal. Don't speed. We don't want to give them any reason to stop you.
Do you ever think that we'll reach a point where we won't have to have these kinds of conversations? Specifically talking about race the way we are.
That's our goal.
Of course, that's our goal.
That's our goal, and I'm not sure.
See, I'm not either.
I think it's possible, but I think that, well, first of all, we got to be willing to talk about the fear, which is what we're doing here.
Agreed.
Mhm.
And we have to, well, racism is a deeply ingrained belief system.
It's more than a belief system.
Well, I say belief system because, and this is switching our topic, but I don't know if this is going to be on here, but I'm going to talk about it. I had to yesterday sit down because I'm going to be facilitator on The Long Shadow, and I needed to watch the entire film. And it was devastating.
How so?
I'm going to say it was devastating in that it confirmed what I already understood about racism.
Which is?
That it is a deeply ingrained belief system that has been ingrained in the white race for centuries of inequality that says that anything that is not white is less than human. Period.
For those
period.
that don't know what the long shadow is, can you just give me an understanding of what it is? I've seen writings about it, but I don't know exactly what it does.
So The Long Shadow is a documentary film in which I forget her last name, but Miss Causey goes back and really takes you through the history as she realized she's known that her family were slavers. And, but she goes back and looks at that whole history throughout this country and even before, and how that evolved and how it came into being, and the intentional way that people have been set up to never survive, to never strive ahead, to never make it, other than if you're white. And so she really touches all of that.
And that title is fascinating. It
Yeah.
took me a minute, but then, I realized that the institution of slavery set up hundreds of years ago casts a shadow, but that shadow remains on us,
The institution of slavery built the United States of
clearly.
America.
And before watching the movie, the assumption is, well, that's Civil War stuff.
No.
It's
No,
not, it's
not at
not.
all.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And you want to do a little ad for the movie?
We'll be hosting the movie, showing the movie on June 19th as a celebration for Juneteenth at United Methodist in Flagler Beach,
Palm Coast.
Palm Coast. And we invite people to come to share the space, watch the movie. I do wish I had watched the movie with someone who cared about me and who I cared about, whose hand I could hold, because I cried through a lot of it. A lot of what we're seeing today is Black history is being erased, and as white history is being erased too, as they erase slavery.
But a lot of white people really don't want to talk about it. They don't even want to acknowledge this.
Well, this is what I was going to say. This is what's behind that whole erasure of history, because looking at something like this shows the depth and the extreme to which those that were in power went to stay in power. And they don't want to see their own barbarism.
Sure, but some people don't want to feel responsible.
They don't want
wanna be
their
reminded.
feelings hurt.
Of course not.
They don't want their children's feelings hurt.
Correct.
Does it hurt your feelings to know that perhaps your ancestors were a part of something like that?
It hurts me to the bone. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it affects me down to the bone.
Mm-hmm.
That these things shaped me and made me who I am.
Well, I think we should go back to Lonnie's original opening of this discussion, is that her nephew feels okay in his own skin, whether he understands it or not, what he's facing. It's your skin that I'm concerned about, and what do you think can be done through SIS or beyond, or is it beyond, to help you to feel comfortable having your nephew come back to Florida and deal as he would want to with your fears?
I don't know how this answer is going to go over, but I tend to not look outside myself for answers.
Okay.
And so I turn directly to my faith and knowing that if he's been brought back here, it's for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And, Lord knows, God forbid, if that reason is so that the flag is waved because of something that happens to him, then that's the reason, because I don't have the power to stop it.
And then my question to you is there anything you can do to help allay some of her fears? As a white
I think as a white person, what I'm doing through SIS is probably the best thing that I can. I'm learning an incredible amount of reading, going places, just really becoming immersed in what is the lost culture for me and so that I can then understand and hopefully persuade and share with other people, such as this podcast and elsewhere, my story in SIS anthology, Where Colors Meet, and then talking to people. I've been hearing that I am making a difference, that people that have gone to book clubs and whatever have reported back that my story has been helpful. And as a white woman who was just recently brought into the realities and the really depth of understandings, which I'm maybe just still surfacing, has made a huge difference in me. And I'm hoping that whatever we do and the fact that SIS is reaching out to other book clubs and other places around the country and the world to share our story, that as a white woman is the best thing that I can do because I am not Black. So I can not feel exactly what you do, but I am beginning to understand how you feel. And the sympathy is trying to become empathy, which will then lead to hopefully action.
I needed to sit back and ask myself, did I want her to do anything?
And then my question to her is, the transformation that you've experienced, how have you shared that?
Boy, I've shared it with just about everybody that I possibly can. What
And
was
what do
the
you say?
I had a captain of my tennis team who has just died, and I'm going to his memorial next week, Black man, who was a really good tennis player, but because of his cancer, he could no longer play. And we had discussions about me being a part of SIS and what it was, and that we had written an anthology. He bought it. And he sat there not being able to play tennis, but reading it on the tennis court as his team played. I'm meeting pickleball players that have bought my book. They're Blacks and whites and are just enjoying it. So I'm not doing a great deal, but I'm making what I believe is the best Susie Moya that I can.
It's easy to talk to someone who's like-minded. My question was really more about how do you address someone who is where you were, but you've made the transformation to be different.
I think the fact that I'm relating my story as a different person to Black people is just amazing, other than people outside of CIS. And I find that very reassuring because it means that what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do, and I'm on that after 3 or 4 years of really seriously reading, seriously listening to jazz music, going to art museums, whatever, just to get a real understanding of the culture and what the things that we never learned in school, we never learned in our jobs, we've never discussed at a personal level. And to me, I feel like I'm almost ready to start making a difference. But as I said in my chapter in my book, I want to use my lifelong skills as a lobbyist and whatever to be able to persuade in a non-aggressive, in a way that doesn't off-put people, but that brings them in and allows them to have a dialogue and understand that, hey, South Carolina was more than 50% Black slave owner and freeman when the colonies were established. Who knew? Certainly not anybody that grew up with my education. They didn't know that, and that's just little bit by little bit, and it's simplistic, but it's there.
But how do you talk about this without it being off-putting for someone who isn't where you are?
That is a really very important question to me, Pearl, because early on when we joined SIS, we had books that talked about how to, in white skin, or how to talk or whatever in a non-aggressive fashion. I wasn't ready for that yet. And I think that one of the things that SIS could be doing in one of our meetings is to really delve into that picture and that question in a bigger context, to hear lots of context, to hear other points of view, because I can't answer that yet, but I sure am hungry to learn how to do it.
Cynthia, what about you? How do you feel?
That I'm a very old white lady. And yes, I have family members that are not like-minded, fairly close to me. And my approach is different. I believe that I need to find out more about what is driving them.
That's a good point.
That it's always fear. It's always fear. But to have conversations out of love that approach those fears and talk about those and hopefully bring about some kind of understanding about what would help reduce that fear level. And I also believe that proximity is the answer,
Explain what you mean by that.
that we don't fear what we know.
Mhm.
And the more that we come to know each other, the less fear we have about the impact that that other will have on me and mine.
Fear was raised at a session of a number of SIS members had recently. And I had either raised the question or in the back of my mind. My situation is that my family, my closest cousin, who was my best friend, because I came from a widespread military family, and every summer I spent 3 months with her, and she married a black man and was kicked out of the family. So I missed her for 40 years. And my mother, at age 95, still refused to have her family to our summer home. And when I mentioned to my cousin that we had written this book, she pleaded with me in tears to not share our book or talk about it in front of her children, one of whom has a PhD in nursing and the other one is a successful realtor. So that's the kind of thing where I'm striving to be able, and I think fear and understanding where they're coming from is an important step. And I think that that's something that SIS would probably give me more benefit in having a big session on that and how to address it.
Change is always difficult. Change is always difficult. And, you talk about fear, but I think it's really the people who are resisting the discussion that we're trying to have. These are the people that want things to remain exactly the same.
Mhm.
Because anything different would mean, well, I don't know why you have to feel this way. And I'm not altogether sure we will ever get to a point where we won't have discussions like this. I don't know. I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful. But intellectually, I'm thinking, I don't know. Because it's easy to talk to you all, because we all want the same thing. But when I'm trying to embrace someone else, they're looking at me like, no, wait a minute, Pearl. You're trying to sell me a bill of goods, and I'm not buying it. And I've had people say that to me. And I'm not quite sure what to say to attempt to change their minds. Because quite frankly, someone who is there, who refuses to open their mind, I think they're a lost cause. But that's me.
I think maybe that the error may be in thinking that we have to change their minds.
Mm.
I think that everyone wants change, but no one wants to be the change. And what we're doing as a group and as individuals in the group is any change that's occurring is occurring within us, for us, by our commitment to change. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next time.